Autism diagnosis has gone up highly by up to 1,000% in the last 30 years. And yes, we have become better at diagnosing it. And but there's a lot more to that as well. It's not just about the genetics. The genetics haven't, suddenly changed by this much in the last 30 years. So there's other factors into place. And one of the biggest culprits is food and the environment. So when someone has a system that isn't necessarily clearing toxins that well, that might be storing a bit more toxins, that has an element of inflammation or neuroinflammation. When you've got inflammation or the fire travels to the brain, becomes neuroinflammation. When there is a chance and susceptibility to having more infections, as well as a microbiome that's not as diverse, with gut permeability issues. So the gut is allowing things to leak in, the wrong things to leak in and the good things to leak out, such as the nutrients, then that sort of sets the ground for a child who is on the spectrum. So when we understand that, we can start thinking, okay, there are actually changes that I can start making on myself in order to optimize the environment, reduce this neuroinflammation, reduce this toxic burden for these children. So what are these? Well, the first step is the food quality. Food quality is very key, and sometimes parents make a note of when a child has had a certain type of food and how they're reacting and how they're responding. They can be a bit more agitated if it's like an ultra processed food, junk food or McDonald's or anything like that, or even something that's high in sugar, a food that has lots of ingredients and lots of preservatives and additives and emulsifiers, etc. But also, it's changing that, sort of the focus, the concentration, and all these other elements, by also changing their body as a whole. So food quality is very key. So it's about the right type of foods. And if we start thinking about, okay, which are the foods that, the child is having, and what are the most, things that he's eating or she's eating on a daily basis, we prioritize those and we try and go as much toxin-free as possible. So what I mean by that is the first toxins that we experience are the pesticides. So food that isn't necessarily organic usually has a number of pesticides, that is sprayed on the crops in order to, to make them greener and, more. But the problem is when a child who isn't a great detoxifier is exposed to these pesticides, that could be a burden on their immune system and a burden on their mental and physical well-being. So as much as possible, going something that's pesticide, and glyphosate is one of the pesticide that's been highly linked to autism, is going to be a key part of achieving this result. The second bit is the water quality. So, we all take water for granted. But the water that we ingest could actually be introducing lots of chemicals. So nowadays, there's a number of heavy metals, such as lead from old lead pipes, and mercury and cobalt and uranium that can be identified from the water. But not just that, it's the fluoride, it's the chloride, it's hormones and hormone disruptors, is the microplastics. So when you're talking about someone whose system is already dealing with a lot, daily reintroduction of these things is going to have a huge and detrimental effect on their health. And it's going to affect the way they recover or the way they actually help reduce some of the symptoms. So what we usually recommend is to go for a water that has been filtered the right way, and reverse osmosis tends to be the preference, with something that you reintroduce minerals as well. So you don't want to strip out completely the minerals, but reintroduce them. The third aspect of having a diet that can reduce inflammation is also key. So rather than, as much of a diversity, and unfortunately with children with autism, food choices can be a bit limited because of the way it looks, the way it tastes, the texture. So being mindful of that, introduce as much variety, as much whole foods. So go for whole foods as opposed to something that comes in a can, or something that comes with a plastic label, something that has lots of ingredients and an expiry date. So vegetable, fruits, as natural, grains, etc., as well as proteins. Introduce this colorful diversity. So the more colors, the more polyphenols, the more antioxidants, and the more anti-inflammatory effect as well. And then aiming for ketones. Ketones and ketotic diet has been known to be very beneficial in lots of condition, including ASD and autism. And ketones are, come from the healthy fat. So, whether it's avocado or sort of other healthy fats that you could be introducing, achieving a slightly more higher amount of ketones tend to give the fuel for the brain for better recovery. It's important to aim for low sugar. Sugar drives inflammation. Inflammation is a stressor, and that causes the brain to be constantly on fire. And what that does is the child will be more agitated, the child will be, less focused, more tearful, and that could actually slow down their brain development and can have worse effects on the symptoms. The other thing is the ultra processed food that I touched on. So nowadays even bread is an ultra processed food. Unfortunately, you have this sliced bread which comes with 20, 30 different ingredients instead of having sort of the pure bread. Yes, it's important to look at things like gluten and lactose, because gluten and lactose historically they can be a driver of inflammation, especially if a child has certain symptoms such as bloating, and that's why it tends to be a first step to cut them off and reintroduce them slowly. And we can discuss more details on a more personalized approach. The last but not least is the micronutrients. So it's important that, as much so we're introducing this colorful number of foods, we're cutting down the sort of the sugar and the ultra processed food. We're having this diversity, but sometimes we might need to replenish if we're not getting the right amount from the diet. So we might need to replenish some vitamins and some minerals as well as other micronutrients. So the B complex is very key. Zinc, magnesium, selenium, omega-3, certain things like the methyl B complex and folinic acid, which I've touched on in other videos, are also have been shown to improve lots of the symptoms associated with ASD. And in some cases, there's been reports of non-verbal autistic children recovering a lot of the speech and improving in terms of the behavior. So this is, in a nutshell, my go-to recommendations in terms of how you would approach if you have a child or a patient with autism. So you can have all the changes and you can go through the best therapies, and this is quite key as well. It's important to have everything, all the support in the meantime, but if you haven't cleaned the first thing, which is the environment that they're in, the food that they introduce on a daily basis, you could actually be working, and sometimes symptoms could actually get in worse. So it's very important that we get this part right, and it's very important that we try and allow our children to have the best, most optimum diet in terms of better brain development, reducing that toxic burden, and helping that that thriving and flourishing for the children. So if you like this video, please comment, like, and subscribe. And if you want to hear more videos like this, please leave a comment, and we'll be happy to listen to future ideas.